Hey Nick, love your candor. Love your honest approach to what we don't understand. And as a matter of fact, sometimes I think that ought to be one of the main reasons why we keep talking about the money system and monetary reform is to enhance understanding. Okay. Um, with trepidation, do I dare question or try to educate anybody on this matter? But concept of creating money, um, and who creates the money, whether or not it's the banks that create the money or whether or not it's the demand for loans that creates the money, actually creates the money, and who gets the benefit of it. Okay. um, you recall that we crossed paths on the matter of Robert Hempel, who was the senior credit officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, with his conceptual notion of a permanent money system. The fact that what we really need to have is a permanent money system and not a money system that relies on people coming into the bank to borrow money, okay, in order that there be adequate money in the money system. Now that's a fundamental, that is a fundamental, you know, principle that needs understanding. That's how the money system works, okay, and that it's the bankers that have the power to create the money. Uh, 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 yeah, they need to have somebody coming in, and if they don't have the people coming in, what happens? The money supply is gone, and yet we have a great need out in the economy for money, so that the economy can continue to provide the goods and things and keep people employed. So we have the need for money, but we have no method for providing that money into the economy. And there's only two ways that it can happen. Okay, we say at economicstability.org, where I hope this conversation will continue. Okay, we say it's either the bankers create the money, and when the bankers create the money, they get the advantage of money creation, and we can talk about what they are and who the banks are and who the bank corporations are and who the boards of directors of the banks and the bank corporations are. Okay, those are the people that get the benefit, or whether we, the taxpayers, get the benefit. And I want to talk about, relating to one of your other videos from today, thank you, we, the taxpayers, we, the taxpayers, okay, are ultimately responsible for every dollar USD debt that's created. The Federal Reserve is creating those debts now, okay, and they're lending them at 0 to 1/4, less than 1% interest to those banks. Those banks have under their credit card operations that have just increased our cost of the money that we need. The money that we need, obviously, to 30% interest. We're the source. We're providing it to them at less than 1. They're turning around and charging us 30. Okay? And if there's not something about that doesn't make every one of your viewers and listeners and readers become monetary transformationists, become monetary revolutionists, become people that understand that there's something wrong with the money system that needs changing, Nick, then we're going to get what we deserve, which will be more of the same. The deeper the hole, the more debt servitude. That's the nature of the debt money system. Now, here, let me tell you what I agree with you, especially some of the things I agree with you. That, when China comes over here and lends us, $100 billion, that's not money creation. Okay, that's not money creation. Okay, because we already created that money. Okay, that was when the money was created. Okay, and that money went over to China. Okay, and now that China's using that money to come back to us and to lend it back into our economy, for which we're going to pay them interest. So that whole concept, is correct. There's no money created there. Okay, Pete used M3, and he used M3 and he stopped at 2005 because we don't get M3 after 2005, and that's when the investment banks really took off. in terms of creating financial things that made them more money. Okay, was at the was 2005, 6, 7. I mean, that's the story that we that's part of the story that we don't have, and this goes to the thing about understanding. You know, how how our need to understand and our right to understand, our right to be informed and have an understanding about the money system is thwarted, you know, by the bankers going to the people and saying, you know what, maybe we really oughtn't tell them about how much of this stuff that we're creating because, you know, maybe if they know, we're going to have a revolution in this country and in the world, you know, about the money system. So that's why he used that period. Now, what he really said, if you get beyond kind of the interesting details of the history of seigniorage and how it works, what he really said is that we created $600 billion a year in this country, okay, and that if that was the right amount of money to be created, and if the government had been creating that money debt free, no debt, paying it into existence for that period of time, those are the benefits that could have come out of it. Now, to me, that's the heart and soul of Pete's article, because that gets to, what we advocate in terms of monetary policy. By the way, the same thing that Milton Friedman advocated in his papers on fiscal and monetary framework for economic stability. Why? Because if you do that, you take away the private creation and destruction of capital, and that's what Milton Friedman called for: an end to the private creation and destruction of capital. Nick, okay, what's the private creation and destruction of capital? The lack of a permanent money system. You see, that's how this all ties together. So then maybe the major question becomes whether the banks create the money, whether we're using the right terminology when we say the banks create the money versus the government creates the money. Okay? And you're saying no, it's really the demand for loans that creates the money. No, it's not, Nick. Okay? How much money existed the day before you went in and borrowed money? And how much money existed at the end of that day is an increase in the money supply on the books of the banks. The banks created the money. Okay? Yeah, there's an obligation of, because they use T accounting on how that money goes into a bank account, becomes an obligation of to whom, and when that money gets deposited again in another T account, creating obligations of from whom to whom. But all that stuff really doesn't matter, Nick. Okay? What matters is that the banks create the money, and they create it by charging interest on it into existence, whether they're doing that to buy treasuries and lending that money to the government, who could create it out of the power that they have to create the money, or not. Okay, that's the difference that Pete's talking about. Pete's talking about the difference between the government creating $600 billion. We recognize $600 billion is an off-the-chart number. And that's the low number, because after 2005, the M3 really took off. The equivalent of M3 really took off. It's too high a number. But who's watching? Greenspan, Bernanke, are they watching and saying, you know what? We're creating twice as much money as a rational monetary policy would have. No monetary policy, there is no policy. Okay, there's no monetary policy. There's no government control of the money system. And all of that has resulted in the fact that we, the taxpayers, okay, are responsible for paying interest to the banks that are creating the money, instead of us getting the benefit of the banks of the government creating the money. We're gonna follow up on this, Nick. Okay, this is a fundamental issue. This is the fundamental issue about money creation. I'm replying here to your commentary, because because I and Pete and all of the people that watch your Modern Mystic videos respect you. That's why they're there. But thanks for doing that, Nick, and I hope that this is some explanation.